It's time for Agriculture, presented by Turkana Farms in Germantown, New York, a small-scale producer of heritage breed livestock and a wide array of vegetables and berries on just over 39 acres. They also produce a full array of garden vegetables, many of them heirloom varieties raised naturally, as well as an assortment of berries, including raspberries, blackberries, gooseberries, black, red, and white currants, mulberries, and elderberries. And now, here's Mark Scherzer.
Writers tend to return to a few themes repeatedly. Maybe it's because preoccupation with an idea is what drives someone to write. Or maybe each person just has room for a few big concepts, the prism through which they see the world in their soul. Just as sheep can only remember 15 human faces, maybe we are wired to be only able to think about a few issues in depth. Or in my case, maybe there's a third explanation, which is that I have to return to the same questions over and over again because I'm unable ever to resolve them. I compulsively examine the pluses and minuses on every issue. I think I've resolved a question, like will I be a city mouse, a country mouse, or a straddler, only to find some new event or thought or angle that throws everything into doubt. So I procrastinate about making the final decision and therefore have to re-debate repeatedly as I inch toward resolution. So here I am again, contemplating the fate of my aged, frail, blind ewe, Aisha. Decisions about the end of her life have recurred every month or two, with each successive setback to her health. And each time I've concluded that she can no longer enjoy the essence of a sheep's life in its fullness, and that it's probably time to bring things to a merciful end, I've also found a new reason not to carry through. I fear this presages how I will adjust to my own future decrepitude. If anyone asks me now, I'd say I would find dependency humiliating and have no desire to live if I cannot lustily enjoy the pleasures I've always pursued. A few years ago, I told my friend George, one of my medical proxies, that if anyone offered me a seat on the subway, it was time to withdraw all medical care from me. But then someone offered me a seat, and I moved the goalpost. It's been many months since Aisha, who last fall would wander frantically in circles, bleating and desperate to graze with the herd from which she'd become separated, has participated in the herd's daily wanderings. Lately, while everyone else was off in the far pasture, Aisha could generally be found grazing alone, within 50 feet of the barn. She seemed contented, but I wonder if that's not just wishful thinking on my part. Sheep are the quintessential herd animals, to the degree that it would be inhumane to keep just a single sheep as a pet. They live to be part of the herd. It's been a couple of months since Aisha got tangled in an old fence, where she was stranded for several hours and could not, when untangled, stand up. I had to put her in a wheelbarrow and wheel her to the barn, where she thankfully recovered function before I could have her put down. It's been several weeks now since Aisha has been able to effectively navigate the twice-daily grain treat stampede in the barn. Sheep eating habits can be rather rough, although there's more than one grain bowl per sheep, and I spread them out all over the barn. Typically, a sheep will take a bite or two out of one bowl and quickly move to the next, often bonking out who's ever at the next bowl, until the sheep change bowls several times in a kind of chain reaction. Recently, Aisha's been knocked over several times in the stampede to the feed, and I've noticed that even though she tries to start in the most remote bowls, the location of which she has a mental memory for, she gets bonked out of the way more quickly and violently than any of the others. They know they can push her around, and the only remedy is to give her a several-minute head start at feeding time. The last few days, Aisha has seemed even more unsteady on her feet, falling as she tries to come to the barn, and on a couple of occasions requiring that I carry her in. Friday, when I got to the barn in the morning, I found her lying on her side and unable to get up. I put her in a pen, and after a couple of hours of rest, I was finally able to position her to sit sternally, that is, up on her chest, with her head up, with 2 legs under her and 2 out to the side. In that position, she's been able to drink water, munch on hay, and avidly devour grain treats, but try as she might, she has remained unable to stand up, even if I lift her up onto her leg. She seems comfortable, and I put that in quotes because I've imposed on her a human conception of convalescence. But the vet told me that Aisha would tell me when it's time to go, and I think Aisha has told me. Barring a miraculous recovery, it's time for goodbyes. I take solace in Ayse's and by extension my own place in the larger ecosystem. In some sense, we all exist simply as conduits of energy, each creature or life form feeding on another. Indeed, I sometimes have wondered whether our activity here as humans on planet Earth, which we find so uniquely driven by intentionality and somehow on top of the pyramid of life forms controlling the others, is in fact any different in kind from any other creature. Just as our guts contain a microbiome of millions of tiny organisms interacting and feeding on one another, I wonder if we ourselves might not be relative microorganisms in a nook of the gut of some much larger being. We think we control and shape our world, when in fact we are simply cogs in that being's digestive process. Unfortunately, because of the powerful drug given to euthanize an animal, Ayse will have to be buried deep in the ground and not returned, like the doe who died here 2 weeks ago of natural causes, to a higher level of the food chain. The drug that quickly kills her would sicken any scavenger that partook of her flesh. Still, there's comfort to being able to time her death, to support her through it, and to know that her energy will remain here, feeding back even at the microorganism level into the energy of the farm.
Agriculture is underwritten by Turkana Farms, LLC, a small-scale producer of heritage-bred livestock and a wide array of vegetables and berries on just over 39 acres in Germantown, New York. More information, 518-537-3815.